Hello, hello, and welcome to the panel for Black Writers Week. We are here for the Her Story panel, and I'm going to be moderating this panel today. My name is Charisma Ray, and I am an Atlanta-based blogger. I have been blogging for about 15 years, so the only publishing I have done has been digital. But I'm so happy to be here with these phenomenal women and facilitate this conversation. We're going to talk about strategies, tangible tips to monetize your writing. We're also going to talk about building sustainable careers and breaking barriers, and also how to unlock some revenue streams, because we got to get to the part about the money as well. So I'm super excited to chat with them and talk about their journeys, have them tell their stories. And raise your hand if you're in the audience and you have your own story. You have a story to tell. All right, so that's mostly everybody. So if we have a story to tell, we want to help you to get it out if you have not told your own story. And we're super excited. We're going to have the panelists introduce themselves one by one and just a little bit about their background and who they are. So we're going to start with Candace.
Hello, everyone. I am Candace Doby. I am a speaker, author of A Cool Girl's Guide to Courage, and I am a coach. So I help professionals increase capacity for courageous leadership. It's what I do. I travel the country talking to audiences at conferences and corporations. So I'm excited to be here and talk more about my journey, how this actually came into being. It's a pretty interesting story.
I can't wait to hear. My name is Brenda Nicole Moorer. I am a singer-songwriter and actress. I also work in nonprofits and do a lot of consulting for arts. Kind of do both things, business arts and the artist arts side of things. So I've been doing that pretty much all my life, and yeah, that's me.
Hello, everyone. My name is Love Nafi. Very honored to be on this panel with all of you ladies here. So I have an interesting background. I am a writer, director, producer. I love film. In the past, I produced unscripted content as well as docuseries, and most recently in the last 2 to 3 years, I have delved into narrative film and have been able to produce, direct, and write my own short film titled Crown, which has screened in about 3 cities to sold-out shows, and also been able to co-produce on a film called Look Back at It with writer-director Felicia Pride. Fun fact about me, I'm also a board-certified family medicine physician by training, and I was a major in the United States military, which I no longer am, but I'm excited to just talk about my career transition and journey and really just unlock the power of all of our stories.
That is amazing. So I'm just happy to talk about it. I want to hear about it all. And as we know, y'all, every good story has a beginning, a middle, and an end. So we're going to start from the beginning. Let's just talk about the path. When you started the journey that you're on, when you look back and you think back, how did you know this was going to be your path, and kind of how did you know, like, the moment, this is the path that I'm supposed to be on?
So my work really started, my formal training, I'll say, is marketing. I majored in marketing. I had a 16-year successful career, 16-year career in marketing. 11 out of those years were spent at Chipotle. And so I actually managed, young professionals all across the country. And what I thought I was going to be doing was helping these young professionals learn or teach them how to create marketing strategies, for the business. And what I ended up doing was helping them navigate professional spaces from a place of power and to advocate for their ideas and to stand up for, their points of view when that seemed difficult to do. And so really what happened is I kind of came to a realization that this is the work that I wanted to do. I want to help people take worthwhile risks in the workplace. And before I focused on young professionals, I actually focused on youth, so high school students and college students. And when I was starting in my business, one of the things that came to me was if I was going to talk to youth and young adults about courage, which I think is critical for us to develop into the fullness of our potential in ourselves, that I had to make it fun. I couldn't talk about courage and it be like this intimidating, boring topic. I had to make it fun to talk about. And so I came up with the idea of giving courage a voice. Like if courage was a 26-year-old Black auntie, what would she say to her 16-year-old, cousin or auntie. And so I developed this voice for courage. And I thought that I needed to share this voice in a book. So I actually came up with the idea to write a book from the voice of courage that I had given courage this voice.
It was personified it.
I personified it. Courage became a person. And it was called If Courage Could Talk. So I self-published the book. It was called If Courage Could Talk. And it actually later got picked up by a traditional publisher, which is now A Cool Girl's Guide to Courage. So I can dig into that a little bit more. I know we want to get through everyone's stories, but so self-publishing can absolutely lead to traditional publishing is kind of my headline.
Yeah, so that was almost a part of your purpose. It sounds like it's been there all along. So you had some signs along the way.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love that. Brenda?
So I actually started, I went to college for marketing. Although I was singing and acting, it was more of like a side thing, and talking about courage. I, at the time, didn't have the courage to think of myself as like a full-time artist. So instead of going to college for, drama or music, which I could have because I had done governor's honors for Georgia, had done, All-State and all these things, I let my fear kind of hold me back at a young age. And so I went into marketing at Georgia State University and got a degree in advertising and marketing, which at the time I was like, well, I guess it can end up helping me in my artist stuff later, not knowing that literally the whole everything was changing, and that you would eventually, to be an artist, have to also be an entrepreneur. So it ended up working out for me pretty well in those terms. And then I went and got a master's degree in arts management, and I worked in theaters for a really long time, still kind of tipping my foot in both worlds, where I'm kind of on the stage and off the stage. And I gained and learned so many skills, especially in terms of fundraising and getting your art funded, where you're not having to go out and do it yourself. And so I left my day job and transitioned to being a full-time artist 6 years ago, and I've been doing it ever since, with just being a singer and an actor. And I have published about 40 songs published with ASCAP, and I ended up self-releasing 2 records, 1 record getting picked up by P-Vine Records in Japan, so I released a record in Japan, and then the last record that I released was released on Rope-A-Dope Records, and actually was fully funded, $30,000 that I did not pay any of it myself, using the skills that I learned from my arts marketing background, getting it fiscally sponsored. We can go into all of that, how I got it funded, but
so it sounds
You're ready to give
all the tea, the details. So you mentioned kind of that fear. What was the sign? Because obviously, I think everyone up here has gone to college, but we in some capacity, you didn't know what you were going to do creatively originally. Mm-hmm. What was the sign that you okay, I'm on the right path? I went to school for this, but I may need to be doing this.
Yeah. I had been a year or two deciding in my brain, should I do it? Should I do it? And I ended up talking to a lot of artist friends who were like, you know what? There's never going to be a time when you're like, yes, it's now perfect, let's do it. That's called faith, where you just have to believe and take this step and do it. And then things just fall into place and happen. So I ended up taking that leap of faith, because I had to choose between continuing to go back to work or going on tour with someone that I was singing with. And I was like, well, I can keep struggling to try to do both, or I can make the leap and see. I don't know what's next. I have no idea. But I took the leap, and I threw a party called, excuse my language, I'll say F Fear. I threw a party called F Fear. I'm a real artist. This is my real job. And I invited all my artist friends to it, and they just cheered and supported me on. And it's been 6 years.
That's amazing. It's so important to have a village. I realize that's like a cheat code. It's like a hack. Mm-hmm. When you're around people who are really supportive of what it is that you're doing as a creative, as a business person, you really have to have that village around you. So Love Nafi, what was that moment for you? I know, like, being in the film industry is a lot, and you're like, okay, even on the actor side or the filmmaker side, it's always something. How did you know, like, okay, this is where I'm supposed to be?
It's so funny. So I'm going to piggyback off a couple things that Brenda had mentioned. Even before the panel was starting, we were talking about what it meant to be in front of the camera versus behind the camera. And also, I'm just going to touch on, too, how a lot of the skills in your story, which you may think don't apply, just somehow find its way into you being successful with what you actually want to do. So for me, I actually was, ever since like middle school, was in a drama club, dance club. And my first year of college at Bowie State University, I had a full scholarship for theater and dance. But my parents, I come from immigrant home. They were like, that's not a real career at the time. So they wanted me to still become a physician. So I left Bowie State because they wouldn't allow me to do both. So I went to NYU. I actually got my degree in youth development and performing arts and then did pre-medicine. At the time, I applied. I had a big fight with my parents. I applied to medical school, and I only applied to 3. That was untraditional at the time. Mostly people apply like 15. I applied to 3. I was like, but I don't feel like doing this. But I got into it, and I was like, oh, crap. And then I had to go. So I ended up going to the University of Maryland School of Medicine. I joined the military because they paid for my school. And after expensive tuition at NYU, I was like, no more student loans for me. So through it all, though, where film comes in, so throughout all those years, I needed a creative outlet. Like, I literally was drowning. So even at my graduate school, I would do plays. Like, we did the Vagina Monologues. When I was at NYU, obviously I did stuff. But, even after that, I had then got into studio production and film production. So I went to school in Baltimore, but I drove like an hour to DC like once a week to like take classes in film, editing, all those things to learn the technical side of film. And then eventually throughout the years, I started producing my own work. So, I just got real resourceful with my community, like you all reference, and just like would create stuff all the time. So I eventually kind of built up my portfolio, and I would say just now in the last 2 to 3 years is when I really kind of flip-flopped and said, hey, I'm going to be a creative full-time. So
in the beginning, you didn't really no, you just were doing it. You were doing the work, and you just was like, hey, let's just make it work.
Yes, and I would say the reason where I knew that film was because, being in front of the camera, it takes a lot of self-work, and when you're young and you're auditioning, a lot of us, at least I'll speak for myself, I wasn't really ready mentally to go through the audition process over and over again. So when I found film, I was like, oh, this is nice. I get to be in charge. I'm about to just do this, and I fell in love, and that was that, so.
Wow, yeah, and the mental part, we don't talk enough about that. The mental part of this work as an author, as a creative, as a filmmaker, like whatever in the industry, that I feel like is the most important part. Because mentally, you have to be ready for a lot of things. You have to be ready for failure. You have to be ready for success. I remember I did actually, go to school for acting. And one of the coaches was like, well, what if you get a $10,000, contract or, pay? You don't even know what to do with $10,000. You don't even feel like you're worthy of $10,000. You're going to self-sabotage. Yeah. So I think that courage and the mental muscle that you need to persevere in this industry. Let's talk about that. Courage. You literally wrote a book about it. Literally, and we're going to get to the money, but let's get to the mindset first, because I think that's super important. So who or what gave you the courage, as you were on your journey?
It was really, I think, what all of us probably have in this room. It's the feeling that you need to do something. There's an idea that is calling your name, that is itching to get outside of your brain and into the world and into the universe. And so for me, it was this. It was, I need to give courage a voice, and I wanted to come up with short little quippy quotes that courage would say to you, so you can get your stuff together and get your idea, your book out of your brain and on paper. And so one of the quotes that's actually in the book that I actually had to use for myself. If Courage could talk to you, what Courage would ask you for whatever project you want to put out, Courage would ask you, if you're struggling or you're feeling stuck or stunted, the question is, what rules are you following that don't exist? And so often what I have found is whenever I'm feeling stuck or stunted or I'm struggling, it's usually because I am following a rule that does not exist. So it could be that I feel like I have to do this a way that I saw somebody do it on Instagram. It could be that, I feel like I have to do this because my mom, my brother, my auntie said that I needed to do it like this. And so I feel like so often as creatives, as people, we follow rules that don't exist. And so when we recognize that there's a rule that is totally made up, we can free ourselves from it so that we can move forward. I think the fear that I had to get over as an author, as a creative, the number one fear I had to get over with putting something out there, because my thing was, what if people don't get it? I'm giving Courage a voice. This is crazy. This is out there. What if people do not get it? And so I think as creatives, the number one fear that came up for me during this process is fear of rejection. And so we're constantly, fearful of negative evaluation, what people will think of us, what people will think, and it comes back to, why are you doing it? It's always going to come back to your why.
Because at the end of the day, that doesn't really matter. It will never matter unless you make it matter. What people think about your process and where you are, because I think as creatives, we get judged. Like, why are you doing that? You're doing that? You think that's going to work? Because especially as women and as individuals of color, it's not a common thing to achieve success. I was raised in South Georgia. You get a good job, and you go to school, you get your education, and you just go on about it. So what would you say to someone, I guess Brenda and Love Nafi, what would you all say to someone to encourage them when they're starting out? What are some practical tips and tools that you would give them, especially within the industries you're in?
I think self-talk is kind of the biggest thing. You have to be able to talk yourself into what you want to do, talk yourself off of a ledge, talk yourself, through all of these things, because yes, as creatives, we do face a lot of rejection. And I think we have to get it inside of our head that we're not, our purpose is not here to be approved by someone else. Our purpose is here to just do. And however, we can't control who takes it, who receives from it. All we can do is show up as ourselves and honestly give. And what I have learned is that the fear is that we get scared that everybody's not going to get what we're giving. But the truth is, everybody is not supposed to get what you're giving. There is someone that you were supposed to be giving something for, and that person's going to get it. Once you give it, all you have to do is put it out there, and then who's supposed to receive something from it will. And you don't have to worry about, if they're going to get it, and I have to tell myself this still all the time. Like even for auditions, like when I go into an audition room, I used to go into audition rooms thinking like, oh, I have to get this job. Oh, I have to show and do my best. No, I have to show up as me authentically and give what I can give. And I can't control what anybody else has to say or feel or think or do about it. All I can do is do what I can do. And I think that has kind of been the biggest lesson that I've learned as being an artist, for performing on stage, and even just in living life, even if you're not a performer, just in anything that you do, showing up authentically as you and just giving from your purpose, what you're supposed to be giving. That's it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so definitely echo everything that everyone said already. And I would just add, so the way I looked at it is, for me, if I wasn't looking kind of crazy, then I wasn't doing it right. When I think about all the people I admire, at some point they were a little bit off to everyone else around them, and I think that's okay. I think for me, I call them scheduled leaps. So for me, I just started training myself to do things that maybe I thought were scary and just do it and don't think about it and that is just what you need to do to get comfortable with doing that over and over and over again, because that's part of the career. You're going to keep doing things
You have to do
that
it.
you don't like. Yeah.
Because it's like, the quote I love is like, somebody somewhere is waiting on you to do what God called you to do.
Correct.
And every day I get up, I'm like, oh my gosh, like I got to do it because somebody waiting on me to do it. I don't know what blog post, whatever I'm about to put out, what content, whatever, but I think that's part of what keeps us going. So let's quickly jump into the legality of things, because I know, like, even as a blogger, like, I was just doing it for fun when I started, but I had to actually set it up as a business. Like, no, who's the company gonna pay? Like, they gotta pay my business. So what was a tip that you learned early on when it comes to the legal stuff, the business side, that really, really helped you even to today?
With the book?
With the book, yes. With your publishing, with your art, with your creative side, we also have to have the business side.
Yeah.
So what was that one thing that you did or you heard and you was like, okay, I gotta do that, and it really, really paid off for you?
I would say with the book, my book was, when I self-published, it was illustrated. I hired a designer. So coming up with contracts where you're very clear about what is, the scope of work, if you're working with people, what their responsibilities are, what your expectations are for the money that you're paying them, I think is something that has carried me absolutely throughout the work that I do now. So just being very clear about expectations when you are working with people. The one thing that I'll share as part of this book is I self-published it, like I mentioned. I know there's so many programs out there right now. I paid $8,000. I saved $8,000 and paid $8,000 up front. I hired a designer to illustrate my book. My husband happens to be a copy editor, so that was free. And then I had to get it printed. So I had to pay the printer. Everything was $8,000 for 1,000 copies.
Yeah, I hear that. It takes money to make money.
It takes money to make money. I sold 1,000 copies in a year. It took me about a year, but I caught the attention of a traditional publisher. So do your thing. Do your work, put it out there, okay? Because you don't open up the door to possibility if you're just waiting. If you're waiting for something, if you're waiting for money, if you're waiting for somebody to give you the validation, you have to put your thing out there and you open your world up to possibility and opportunity.
So I know you found success. You talked about your success even in the industry. What was that like for you? And you're like, okay, now I'm at a different level, because I saw your excitement. You worked on a project with Ms. Hudson.
Yeah.
So talk about how that set you up for the next level, and you was like, okay, that may have not been your shift, but what was that moment like for you? Like, I got to do this for real.
It definitely, that definitely was the biggest projects today that I've been a part of is the Respect movie, where I got to sing and act alongside Jennifer Hudson, who played Aretha Franklin in the movie, and I played Brenda Franklin. And Brenda Franklin is alive still, so she was on set. It was a whole thing, really cool. But yeah, I think at that moment it was again my self-talk, because I felt like I was an imposter at first in those rooms, like Heather Headley sitting here and Forrest Whitaker and Audra McDonald and all these huge people that I've been watching on TV for years, feeling like, oh wow, there must be some mistake that I'm in this room. It must be some mistake, or so I don't know. And then I had to tell myself, no, I worked for this. I auditioned 3-4 times to get myself in these rooms. I did this, and it was my belief in what I was going to be able to do that helped push me through it. So I think it was on set, really. Oh, I actually know when. Okay. So I was talking, I have 3 children. No, yes, I have a 15-year-old, a 13-year-old, and I started all over, I have a 2-year-old. And so at the time, I think my daughter was turning 13 or something like that. And I was like, I need to throw a party. And we're sitting backstage, and Heather Headley is sitting next to me, and we're talking about party ideas and stuff. And she's like, oh, well, you should just rent out a theater. That's what I did for my son's birthday party, and you can just buy out the theater. And I was like, what? What? I can't do that. But it dawned on me that I'm in this room with her, and so she thinks that I am where she is in life. And so I had to be like, wait a minute, I am here. I am here. And that is literally the moment where I was like, okay, I have to claim it for myself.
Right. What about you, Love?
So yeah, my biggest advice, and just to kind of also correlate with what everyone else was saying, is that believe that what you are is now, right? So, a lot of people think I'm an aspiring this, I'm aspiring that. No, you are this now. And I think that was probably the single most thing that allowed me to just kind of block out all the imposter. Because I've been in so many career fields where it's very hierarchical, very demanding. You have to always be proving yourself. For me, I've learned to kind of train that out and just say right here and the now, like, hey, I'm an actress and I'm capable and I'm worthy. I think that's probably the most single thing that you can probably affirm to help you get from point A to point B. And also, I would just say to remind me, like, the question, just so I make sure I answer.
About the legalities of
business.
The business side of it.
So with that, the imposter goes away when you brand yourself correctly. When it's so many resources out there right now. I'm really big on attention to detail. So from the customer experience, from when they encounter you on a website, a social media, in person, what resources and skills are you sharing, or what presentation are you sharing at that touch point, all the way up until they achieve or acquire your product. Which is your art or whatever it may be.
Big on the social media. So as someone who is a social media influencer myself, and also that's where we are today, y'all. That's where I know a lot of people, creatives, we don't want to do the business side. We don't want to do the marketing, the actual marketing side. We just want to do what we do. But that is super important in monetizing what it is that you do. If everybody in your phone does not know that you just put out a book, if everybody in your email threads and everything, that they don't know about your project, then you got to tap into that as well. So the final question I guess I would ask is about legacy. To me, legacy is one of the most important things we could do as creatives. So I know as a blogger, I'm passing things down to my cousin. They're 14 and 15, they're TikTokers. They know about what it is that I do, but I teach them. What are you doing to preserve your legacy and as a creative, as an author, and pass that down to the next generation?
Yeah, I have a 20-month-old daughter, and I think about this all the time. And my whole business, everything that I do is built around courage and taking risks, worthwhile risk. And so that's what I every day try to embody in my business, in my book, and everything that I do, so that she can grow up to be someone who takes worthwhile risks, who can challenge authority respectfully, who can be whoever the heck she wants to be in this world as a beautiful Black girl. So I just want her to be the most courageous, person that she can be.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. What is your legacy as an artist? What does it look like for you? Because legacy is not something that's, when I'm gone, and years now. It's now. It's what you build now as a creator to preserve your work.
Yeah.
Years and years and years.
I think, and what I'm trying to do in building my legacy is just be authentic in what I'm presenting and being a good example for my daughters, and showing them that you really can do whatever you want to do, be whoever you want to be, if you just believe that you can. I know that sounds like really corny, but it really is true. And then, formally on paper, making sure that I have a living will, making sure that I have my copyright stuff right, so when I pass along, if one of my songs becomes super famous one day, that they get the rights for those things and all of that. So another thing about the legality of things is I've learned that if you do not have the skill set to do something yourself and you know that you need to, don't be a party of one. Right. Go ahead and hire people that know what you need to be able to help you.
Yeah, and get your creative house in order.
Yes, yes.
Correct.
Yes.
So for me, I love being a multi-hyphenate queen. That's kind of what my legacy is. And I feel that, it's okay to use right and left brain. You don't have to fit in anyone's box that they create for you. If you are a scientist and also a dancer, great, do that and be happy about that. I think so often we try to really kind of package people into this one thing, and we are much more dynamic and much more. We have so much more to offer as humans. Our minds are so powerful. So, you know, I have a one son, he's 4, he's very creative, but I just want, you know, him to feel like the world is his oyster and he can do so many different things. He doesn't have to limit himself to one career path or one journey, just because that's what the world tells us.
Absolutely, and I think that's just so important to teach the kids, because the next generation of writers and creatives, they're looking, that, you know, it's not big in our community, but they are literally thirsting for, oh, somebody did it, so now I can do it. So if you know, have a book out or project out, just, you know, someone in your family probably wants to do what you're doing. So I thank you, ladies, so much for sharing your stories, for talking to us about your journeys, for giving us courage, for giving us the power to believe we are who we say we are. So thank you all so much. Again, I'm your moderator, Charisma Ray, and I hope you guys have an amazing rest of the weekend. And if you guys have any questions, we'll be down to answer them.
Can we do quick shout outs?
Oh, absolutely. We need to know where we can find you all on social media.
Thank you. I'm at Candace Doby, at Candace Doby on all of the socials. LinkedIn and Instagram are probably the most active.
Nice. I'm at Brenda Nicole Moorer on all social medias, on music, Spotify, IMDb, all the things at Brenda Nicole Moorer.
And I am at Love Nafi on all platforms as well. You can find me on social media. You can learn more about me at www.lovenafi.com. And please shoot me an email if you have any creative ideas that you want to develop.
Absolutely. So thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We also have to thank the Auburn Avenue Research Library for hosting us. We also have sponsors: Amazon, KDP, Kindle Direct Publishing, AJC, BookLogic, the Atlanta Mayor's Office of Film and Media, Partake Foods, Penguin Random House. Let's be clear on that. Very, very big publishing. And thank you all for hosting us at the Auburn Avenue Research Library. So make sure you guys tag us in your stories or Instagrams, Black Writers Weekend, and hashtag Black Writers Weekend as well. Again, I'm at Charisma_Ray on Instagram. And thank you all so much for joining us.